Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best champions to carry the lower elos right now. So I'm going to give you 5 champions that I think you should definitely look to pick up if you have not already, and I'm also going to give you 5 honorable mentions at the end of the video. The 2 things that I took into consideration when making this video is whether or not the champion was easy to play or not. I really think that if your main goal is to get out of bronze and silver the fastest or even gold, you should just stick to the champions that don't have a high mechanical skill cap, because it means that you're just not going to miss out on your damage in team fights as often, and you're just going to be a lot more consistent. I also took into account whether or not the champion is good in this meta right now, and just my overall opinion on whether or not I think the champion is strong at this moment. So with that being said guys, let's get into the video. First up on my list is going to be Evelynn. So right now, I think that Evelynn is a pretty underrated pick. We really haven't been seeing a whole lot of her recently, but with the tank meta fading away quite a bit these past few patches, I think that she is a much stronger pick right now. She wasn't the best in the tank meta because she really isn't a tank killer champion. She really wants to go up against enemy team comps that are squishy, because that means she's going to be able to look for that one-shot potential, and it's just going to allow her to assassinate more targets in those mid to late game team fights. If the enemy team does have like 2 or 3 tanks, then she's really not going to be as useful if it does go to late game. She's probably one of the best early game junglers for the lower elos, because a lot of people are not going to buy pink wards in bronze and silver. I think that Evelynn is just really effective because you can gank really well in the early game with her because of her passive, and if you can get a nice snowball going in the early game with Evelynn, then you can just take over a game. So if you're looking for a strong jungler right now for low elo, then I would play Evelynn for sure. The next champion I would recommend is Pantheon. Now this is mainly for Pantheon top lane. I think that is his best role right now, but you can also play him to pretty good success in the mid lane and in the jungle. I think that Pantheon top lane is just a pretty disgusting pick right now, to be honest, because he really doesn't have a whole lot of bad matchups in the top lane. I've actually been confident in blind picking Pantheon at my elo recently, and I've been able to do pretty well on the champion. When I play him, I like to run Ignite in the top lane on him. The reason being is because you want to try to go for that first blood as Pantheon pretty much every game you're playing him, and taking the Ignite just allows you to do that a lot better. When you're playing him in the early game and you're level 1, look to poke down the enemy top lane champion. If you can get them to a little bit below half HP or to around half HP, then once you hit level 2, you can look to go for an all-in. Now, when you go for the all-in at level 2, you don't want to just jump on them with your stun right away. I see a lot of Pantheon players do this, and it doesn't really work. What you want to do is you want to run at them, and if they flash away, then that is when you use your W. But if they don't flash away, then just keep auto attacking them. If they're at a low enough HP that you know 100% you can kill them by stunning them, then go for it. But you always want to try to save your stun in case they do flash. But overall, I think that Pantheon is a great pick for the top lane, just because he's got really good snowball potential, and also because his ultimate is a great ability for just helping your lanes out and helping your team get ahead in the early game. Next up is going to be another jungler, Volibear. So I think that Voli is probably one of the easiest junglers to play right now, and he's also a champion that's been having a lot of success recently in solo queue. He's really easy because he does not have a single skill shot. He also does a ton of damage without even having to build a single damage item. When I play Volibear, I go Cinderhulk, and I just go full tank after that. And because of your W, you can deal so much damage in teamfights and with your ultimate as well. So I think that just because Volibear can be a super tanky champion yet still deal a ton of damage, he can be really effective in my opinion. He does have a very good early game, mid game, and late game. He really doesn't have a weak point in the game, which also makes him a really good pick. If you can get some nice ganks off in the early game with Voli, then you can definitely get a nice snowball going. And if the game does go to like the 35 to 40 minute point, you're practically gonna be unkillable, because if you have like 3 or 4 tank items, and especially if you do have the Spirit Visage, you're gonna be so hard to kill because your passive is gonna be healing you for more, and you're also still gonna be able to deal a lot of damage with your W. So if you're just looking for a very easy and effective jungler, I would play Volibear. Going back to the top or the mid lane, I have Akali. So I think that Akali is probably one of the better assassins in the game right now. You guys might be a little bit surprised about me saying that, but I think she's really underrated and she's a really good pick after they did change the Gunblade. If you guys don't know what the Gunblade does now, or it still does the same thing, but the active damage on the Gunblade is just absolutely crazy. It does 250 base damage and it also has a AP ratio on it. So once you pick up Gunblade as Akali, your power spike is just absolutely insane now. The one weakness she does have though is that her early game is not the best. When you are playing Akali, just make sure you don't die pre-6. You're gonna have those games where you're gonna get out farmed in the laning phase, but that really doesn't matter because you can make up for it once you do hit level 6 and once you do get your Gunblade. If you're going up against a squishy mid lane champion or a squishy champion in the top lane, then your dueling potential once you get Gunblade is just really good and you can pretty much outduel any other mid lane champion in the game or top lane champion as long as they are relatively squishy and they're not building tank. So just get past that early game as Akali, look to roam at level 6 and look to assassinate the enemy mid lane champion, and you can definitely get a good snowball going on her. If you can get a few items on Akali, then you can just absolutely wreck in team fights because you do have 3 gap closers with your ultimate once they are fully charged up. So once you jump on that target on the backline in a mid to late game team fight, they're pretty much not getting away and you're going to be able to burst them down really quickly. So if you're looking for an easy and effective mid lane or top lane champion right now, then I would pick up Akali. Another champion that I think is great for both the top lane and the mid lane is Kennen. So there are a few reasons why I think Kennen is a really good pick right now, especially for the lower elos. The first one being disengaged champions really aren't played a whole lot in bronze and silver. I was taking a look at some stats and Janna has one of the lowest play rates for any support in bronze and silver, whereas once you get up to platinum and diamond, Janna has one of the highest pick rates. So because disengaged supports and disengaged champions aren't played a whole lot in the lower elos, it makes Kennen a really strong pick, and he's also a great pick because of the introduction of the Hextech Proto Belt item. That item just synergizes really well on him and it just allows him to get that engage off even better now. The main reason why I really like Kennen is because of his insanely strong team fight. If you can get that nice flash engage on the backline in a mid to late game team fight and you can tag the enemy AD carry and the enemy mid lane champion, then you pretty much just won that team fight right there. When you are playing Kennen, just make sure that you do only try to fight when your ultimate is off cooldown. If it is on cooldown, then let your team know when it's up and just only try to fight when it is available, because the amount of damage and the amount of crowd control that you have when your ultimate is on cooldown as opposed to when it's off cooldown is a really large discrepancy. So overall, if you can just get those nice engages off with Kennen in mid to late game team fights, then you can single-handedly win games for your team. So I know I did not mention any AD carry champions or any support champions in the top 5. Now I think personally that support and AD carry are probably the worst roles to carry from this season, especially in the lower elos. Now of course you can carry with pretty much any champion and pretty much any role. I just think that if you're playing AD carry, it is going to take you a lot longer to get out of lower elo and support as well. The reason being is because you just don't have the potential to roam and the potential to help your lanes out in the early game when you are playing bot lane. If you're playing a lane like top lane, mid lane, or if you're playing in the jungle, then you do have that option to help your lanes out, help them get ahead, and just don't let your team get behind. Because when you're playing bot lane, if your team gets behind and you get behind, then you're pretty much not going to win that game. Even if you do get ahead when you are playing as AD carry and your top lane and your mid lane feeds, then the chances of you winning that game are still going to be pretty low. So in my opinion, I would stay away from bot lane, but I am still going to recommend one AD carry champion and one support champion for you guys. So the first, or the AD carry champion I would recommend is Miss Fortune. Now Miss Fortune I think is a great pick right now. The item build of the Youmu's, the Black Cleaver, and the Duskblade on her is just pretty nasty right now. If you can get to a mid to late game team fight and you can just press R and get a good ultimate off with Miss Fortune, it can deal a lot of damage and it could single-handedly win you a team fight. So as long as you can position decent on her and just get that good ultimate off, then you can definitely be very effective on Miss Fortune. The support champion that I'm going to recommend is probably the strongest support at all elos right now, but nevertheless that support is Zyra. So the reason I'm recommending Zyra is because she just does a load of damage, and she also does have pretty strong crowd control and pretty good peel in her kit. When you're laning against a Zyra, it's pretty much a nightmare because she just does so much poke damage with her plant and with her Q, and because she is a support champion who can be really effective by building damage and getting the Leandries, getting the Rylai's, it means that you are going to be able to carry from the support role once you do get to those mid to late game team fights. Other supports that aren't going to build damage like Janna or like Nami aren't going to be the best for you to carry out of bronze because you're not going to be able to deal that damage in those mid to late game team fights, and therefore if your team falls behind, then you're really not as useful as if you were playing a champion like a Zyra. So if you are playing support in the lower elos, Zyra is probably your best bet to go with right now. Next on the honorable mentions is going to be Annie. So unless Annie does get some sort of a change or a rework, she's always going to be a very strong pick for lower elos just because she's very easy to play and her burst combo is pretty much foolproof. As long as you can get your flash stun Tibbers off in those mid to late game team fights and you can one-shot the enemy AD carry or the enemy mid lane champion, then your job is done and you're gonna be very successful on Annie if you can do that. Because she doesn't have any skill shots, or any hard skill shots I should say, her ultimate and her W are both skill shots, but they're very easy to land. So if you can just look for those opportunities when you do see the enemy mid laner or the enemy AD carry caught out and you can go for that flash stun Tibbers combo, then you can carry very hard on Annie in the mid lane. So going back over to the jungle now, I have Amumu. I would really like someone to tell me when Amumu had below a 50% win rate for the lower elos. He's always up there at around 53 and 54% for bronze and silver, and the reason why he's such a strong pick, especially for the lower elos, is because he's just got a really good mid to late game and a really good team fight. When you're playing Amumu, even if you do fall behind in the early game, you're still going to be useful, and if you can just get that one good ultimate off with him in a mid to late game team fight, and if your team follows up, then you could end up winning that team fight, transitioning that into a Baron, transitioning that into towers, or if you already do have a few of the enemy towers, then it can end up winning your team the game. So I think that because Amumu just has a lot of very versatile build paths, being he can go AP or he can go full tank, and also because he is a very strong team fighting champion, he's a great pick for the lower elos. And to round out the honorable mentions and to round out the video, I have Malzahar. So the reason I did not have Malzahar on my top 5 is because he does still have a pretty high ban rate for bronze and silver. He's still banned around 50% of the time, so if he's open, pick him. If he's not, then play one of the other mid lane champions that I did recommend. The reason Malzahar is a very strong pick is also because he does not have very many skill shots in his kit. His Q is a pretty easy skill shot to land. It does take a little bit of time to get used to, but once you get it down, it can be really strong because it is an AoE silence. So if you can get that off on a few targets in a team fight, then you could end up changing the momentum of the fight really quickly. He does a lot of consistent damage while also dealing burst damage, which is another reason why he's a great pick. And the last reason why he's a very strong pick is because of his ultimate. His ultimate is a great counter to a lot of the assassin picks right now. So if the enemy team does lock someone like a Zed or like a LeBlanc or even a Fizz, you can pick Malzahar and you can be very successful because if they try to jump in on the back line, you just use your ultimate on them and they're pretty much useless. So if he's not banned, pick him. If he's banned, play one of the other champions I did recommend. That is going to be all for this video, guys. If you did enjoy and you did find it helpful, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys have not already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.